Welcome back to the show, everybody, and Happy New Year. This is the first episode of 2021. Took some time, needed to clear my head, spend some time with the family. The holidays happened, and then I was slow to get back into the grind of the podcast. But here I am, I'm back, and I'm excited about 2021. I really want to go hard this year. I want to do 100 episodes. That's 2 a week. I've already lost a few weeks, so I got to catch up. Today, I have Dead Union. Most of you know Dead Union if you tune in to our Hogan that we do every Tuesday night, but we might be switching the day to Friday, so stay tuned on our Instagrams to find out news about the new date of Hogan. Hogan is our weekly live auction that we do. It's super fun. You guys should tune in. So I took some time off, chilled with the fam, hung out with my kids a lot, went snowboarding a lot. The Pacific Northwest has been getting slammed with snow. It's been kind of unprecedented, crazy amount of snow. 2 weeks ago, we had like 7 feet in a week. So yeah, and I'm super grateful that we're still in a pretty good position. The mountains are open, and we're able to snowboard. So I'm super grateful for that. And shout out to anybody else in anywhere where it's not open, and it sucks right now because I know lots of places in the world are not as chill as BC. Okay, I want to give a shout out to some of my Patreon members. Okay, John Lowry, thank you. Carson Elkinberry, thank you. Tony Labori, thank you. Michael with no last name, thank you. I got Sam J, thank you. Chris Bailey and Chris Higdon. Thank you all. There's more, but those are the latest members. If you want to join my Patreon, if you want to support this show is funded by the patrons. There'll be a link down below in the show notes, and you can support me for as little as the price of a cup of coffee a month, and I truly appreciate it. Also, like I said, I want to really crush this year. I really want to do a lot of episodes. I enjoy this shit. I love talking to people. I love connecting with everyone. And I love spreading the good word. I want to go 100 plus episodes in 2021. I'm looking for a producer for the show. Okay, I want a producer. I don't want to be editing this shit anymore. It's my least favorite thing to do. So I'm looking for a producer, someone to help me edit the episodes, get a system going where I can just pump out the content, send it to a producer, and together we can make magic. So that's the game plan. If you're interested, obviously this will pay. It's a growing enterprise here. So yeah, looking for a producer. But without further ado, not much else I want to talk about before this episode. I have Dead Union, my homie, and fellow Vancouverite, fellow picker, fellow Hogan. He's a super funny guy. We've known each other for a long time, and he's got a lot of good stories. He's from Australia. He had a crazy experience in 2020 that he talks about on here, and it's just a great episode. Without further ado, let's go with Dead Union.
Vintage clothing by the rack. Just check out my Insta, how you gon' argue with that? Everything you see I manifest. I'm an architect, I think I'ma run it back. We got vintage clothing by the rack. Just check out my Insta, how you gon' argue with that? Everything you see I manifest. I'm an architect, I think I'll have some of that.
Okay. Kirby,
What's
Dead
up,
Union.
Drew?
This is long anticipated, much overdue episode.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, you probably were thinking to yourself, what can I do to get my highest amount of ratings? And you thought, Curb. And I don't blame you. I don't bloody blame you.
Dude, Kirby, you are the first episode of 2021 as well. Ringing in the new year, dude.
Damn, man. I love it. Yeah. Fuck yeah. I'm stoked. Thanks for doing it with me.
Hell yeah, dude. I'm glad. I've originally kind of wanted to do this in person.
But you know, the state of the world, we're doing it on Zoom, just like all the rest.
Yeah, COVID makes shit difficult right now, but it's all good.
So, you know, you and me know each other well. We've worked together. You've worked for me in the past. You have your own vintage business. But I want to start back in the beginning. I want to start in Australia. I want to start like growing up, get your take on like, you know, first of all, what interested you in vintage, but also like how it pertains to growing up in Australia.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, honestly, it all started with my dad, who was in radio. Like in the 70s and 80s, my dad was like the classic radio, like, and that was Neil Diamond. Coming up next, it's Earth, Wind and Fire. Like he's that guy. And he's still that guy. He still is kind of stuck in radio world. So he would get all these promotional items sent, like disc jockeys back then would basically get bribes from record labels to kind of encourage them to play whatever record the label was pushing more.
Please play our song. Please play our song.
Yeah, exactly. And one of those common bribes was merch, T-shirts, you know, jackets, whatever. And so my dad had this box in his garage for the longest time of just old merchandise. And, you know, growing up, didn't think anything of it. And then when I was about 13 years old, for no other reason aside from I've always been the class clown, surprise, surprise. And I'm going through my dad's garage, most likely probably trying to find a small thing of change to go and buy like candy with my mates after surfing or whatever. And all of a sudden I open this box and it's all these old T-shirts. And the first thing I see as I'm going through them and not really, like, again, not looking for T-shirts at this point, about 12, 13 years old. But then I stop and instantly fall in love because it's so funny and it just spoke to me in a way that, you know, it's kind of like that Pickers High. It was my first real taste of that. And it didn't really make sense to me at the time. But what it was a Crocodile Dundee. Remember the movie Crocodile Dundee?
Fucking dude, my childhood, man. Grew up on that shit.
There you go. So classic Crocodile Dundee movie promotional item that I guess was sent to the radio station for whatever reason. And it was like a crocodile holding a knife with the classic catchphrase, "That's not a knife, this is a knife." Big kind of cartoon, bubblehead type crocodile. Paul Hogan was like a cartoon character. And I held it up and I'm like, this is, for whatever reason, the coolest fucking thing I've ever seen. And at that point in time, like if you went to my high school or really any high school back on the Gold Coast, I'm from Gold Coast, Queensland, Australia, which, you know, it's the surfy capital of Australia. It's like the mini Las Vegas of Australia as well. So it's very touristy, tons of fucking great, amazing surfing beaches. And so if you went to my high school dressed in anything but surf brands, you basically were walking into a suicide mission. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, you were like either just poor if you had anything from an op shop. If you wore anything hip hop related, you were like a wigger. So there was this one lane you had to stay in if you wanted to sort of like play by the books. We had to wear a school uniform.
Just a side note on this story. Yeah. Give us the brands. What were the brands back in high school, surf brands that were popping?
So I was a bodyboarder. You know, I was like the nemesis to surfers. And me and my like Boogan crew, it was all about, you know, bodyboard brands. So that would be like Rio Pipo, Manta. They were like the kind of big board manufacturers back in Australia at the time. And then, you know, of course, your Billabong, your Quicksilver. There was a company that I loved and they were called Mount Woodgee, and it was a local Australian thing. Never really went too offshore from what I've seen. And they kind of did, now in hindsight, looking back, they did a lot of very similar stuff to what Stussy was doing with like those weird kind of all over print, you know, those sort of Baja graphics where it's like weird sort of
and
shit
the jacquard knits where it's like logos in the knit and everything.
Yeah, exactly. So I loved a lot of that stuff. And my mum was, you know, a single parent, so it was all about the Billabong second factory, which we had. So Billabong being from the Gold Coast. My mum actually went to high school with the two Billabong brothers, wow. Miami High School, yeah. So there was a Billabong outlet factory with all like the seconds or whatever, and so we lived there, dude. Like we fucking lived there. And it was literally, in hindsight, it was probably my first excitement and entry into what later would become, once meeting you, the world of rag houses, because it was, from memory, this warehouse where it was literally just digging for shit that wasn't completely destroyed. And a lot of it that was sent there was like, you know, buttons that were off center or whatever else. And you would try to find something that didn't look obvious that you got it from that place. So when you went to school, oh, you fucking poor bastard. And like, it was brutal, man. It was rough. So we had to wear a school uniform, but every now and then we'd have a free dress day. And this is private and primary schools all across Australia. Still to this day, you have to wear a school uniform. And our school uniform, Robina State High School, shout it out, was the most mundane, like, it was grey and burgundy. It was brutal. Tie, it sucked. But every now and then we would
That's
get
such
like...
a different thing. I just got to side note that.
Yeah,
because unless you went to a private school in America or Canada, you never had a uniform. And even, like, I did go to private school for part of high school in America, and we didn't even have a uniform. Like, we had... The only thing we had to do was tucked in shirts, I think. And it was super, super lax, man. But that's such a weird concept for, like, kids here to understand every day wearing a uniform, because here, like, that's what you bought clothes for, was fucking going to school. Like, that was your everyday.
And it was also like, you didn't really realize who your tribe was, so to speak, until it was free dress day. You know what I mean? Because obviously so much of what we wear is our identity, especially when you're a teenager and coming of age and you got your goth crew and so on and so forth. So I wear this fucking shirt. I'm like, for whatever reason, I'm compelled to roll the dice. I think it's going to get a laugh. There's this girl that I have a massive crush on, way out of my league.
And we're talking about the Croc Dundee one still, right?
I'm bringing it back.
Okay, good.
So I wear this Crocodile Dundee shirt. All my mates are like, what the fuck? And like kind of laughing, but didn't really get it. And I just didn't care. And for whatever reason, instantly found it felt like it was a badge of honor. Like if people were making fun of me, I was like, good, I don't want to be anything like you anyway. The second I can, I'm getting the fuck out of this place. But this girl, Kate, goes, cute shirt. And dude, I swear to God, that was it. From that moment on, every day I was thrift shopping. I would finish school, I would ride my bike, or mum would pick me up, and we'd normally go surfing. And then afterwards, we'd have like half an hour window before they all closed at 6 o'clock. And yeah, so that T-shirt, that moment with my dad in my dad's garage, really was the beginning of a lifelong obsession. Lifelong, I should say.
That's such an epiphany moment, like one of those moments that you'll remember forever in your life, where like if that moment never happened, the timeline of your life could have been completely different.
Yeah, man, really could have been. And then, so I start we call it op shopping back home, thrift shopping, op shopping. They're called opportunity stores. So I start op shopping like crazy. And, you know, I was really just me and one other guy, who I'll quickly mention, Blake, Japan grade. We used to be really good friends. We've had a bit of a falling out, and maybe one of these days we'll sort of mend that up. But yeah, we were just the only two guys, really. I mean, it felt like we were. And then all of a sudden, the Strokes and Kings of Leon, like that, change everything. And everybody all of a sudden was at the thrift, was at the op shop. And, you know, when you're young and you're territorial and, like, you know, you think that you got there first. So it was so frustrating. And, like, my nickname was, I was always like a popular kid. I was by no means bullied or whatever. It was always my mates busting balls, but they called me Povo Kerbo. Povo is like an Australian slang term for poor. And because I'm wearing old secondhand clothes, Povo Kerbo. And all of a sudden, man,
Australians love to shorten everything, dude. You guys got the wildest slang.
We're the laziest motherfuckers. I don't even know why they let us into so many countries. But yeah, and then so just like that, overnight, people wanted our shit. You know what I mean? And like seeds were starting to be planted about like, oh, there's probably a way to make money off this. But at that point, it was still just going and trying to find it for fun. But honestly, man, that
think because like those bands came out and changed everything, it's because like what those guys were rocking and the style 100%. They were portraying, right? Yeah,
100%. Like, you know, overnight, everybody wanted like 3/4 sleeve 80s baseball skin tight fucking shirts, skin tight kind of bell bottoms, and, you know, just basically trying to look like how Kings of Leon looked in that first kind of, you know, Ramones haircut and whatever. And it was just so instant, man. And like all the bands started copying those bands and everybody started changing their style. It was kind of gross because you're like, man, last week you were a motherfucker with like, you know, some sort of jock kind of get up, and then now you're like coming in with eyeliner and shit. You're like, what's up, guys? Rock and roll. And you're like, nah. But you know, so yeah, that was kind of how the obsession started.
Nice, dude.
Yeah.
So obviously, give us a timeline too. Like, what year? How old are you now?
I'm 36. Yep, 36.
So that was like your high school days were like basically around year 2000, 2001, 2002. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I was expelled. I was expelled in year 10. So, you know, and nothing crazy. I just killed a teacher, but she was a bitch. And no.
Totally deserved it.
just like, you know, just being a smart ass, and school just wasn't for me. And eventually they just basically asked me to leave. But yeah, so around like 2000, so like 2001.
Yeah.
Oh, and then I had this really random experience with this guy from Las Vegas. So again, because Surfers Paradise is like the epicenter of like the tourism of Gold Coast, Queensland, Australia. My dad at the time managed a high-rise building. So my parents were divorced and I would see him every second weekend. And so I'd go and stay with dad. It was great because it was like right on the beach, babes everywhere, go surfing, go like skate around. And, you know, I was never a really good skater, but we used to try. And then all of a sudden, this little shop opens up in an alleyway, and it's this dude, this like crazy greaser Elvis looking guy with like a quiff and like a leather jacket, and it's way too hot to be wearing that. And it was like, what are you doing? And he opened up this vintage clothing store, and it was like fucking mind blowing. And in hindsight, looking back, and then, you know, fast forward years later to when I started working for you and learning about like true vintage, and I'm like, oh my god, I could have sworn this shit was on his walls at like, and having no idea, just being like a 15-year-old kid, just thinking it looked cool. But this guy was a greaser, and I remember he'd always had rolled up cuffs on his jeans, and I remember thinking, it's so weird, what are you doing? Because there wasn't a thing back then, you know what I mean?
So
I
was
used to
that
go
the
and hang
first
out with
vintage
him all the
store
time.
you ever seen?
That was
Is that
the
the first
very-
real vintage store?
That was the very first one I've ever seen, and he was a really cool guy. I
So
don't remember his
Gold Coast
name,
had
but-
nothing previous to that. They had the op shop, and that was it.
nothing. And then, like, you know, if you drove an hour to Brisbane, yeah, there'd be a few, but I was pretty much straight out of the gate really into like t-shirts, and there's no t-shirts in Australia, like, at all. And I just could never really, I would go into these stores, mum would drive us up there, and it was never exciting, except for that guy's store in Surface, but he didn't last long. And I don't know what happened to him. I have a feeling that he married some Australian girl, and he was just this collector and had all this stuff, because it was a really tiny little store. And then one day he was just gone, and never heard from him or saw him again. But yeah,
You've
it's
gotta
a weird
think
spot.
that would have been wicked hard to actually have a successful business in those early days, like pre-internet and pre-being able to make connections. You know,
Yeah.
even to this day, like, it's hard. I know a lot of people that have done it and had to go out of business in Australia, New Zealand, and stuff, because it's like you're either going to pay a $2,000 flight to come over and pick when you have to, or you're going to have really good connections. But back then, like, there wasn't the connections. It wasn't a big business, and probably people
Yeah.
didn't get it as well who were there, the buyer's side, right?
And even now, like, I've got friends that have stores, or at least doing their hustle. And for I mean, it is obviously, as this becomes such a global thing, it is obviously on everyone's radar. But for the most part, it's like polyester button-up shirts for somebody to wear to their 70s theme party or whatever. Like, that's always what it felt like going into these places. It felt so like you were walking into like a Hollywood stylist fucking traveling wardrobe for like some 70s movie, you know what I mean? Like, it didn't really have much soul to it. There was one store that opened up. I came friends with him. His name was Wayne, and he did just like Art Deco furniture, and he had the coolest shit, man. And I loved a lot of furniture as well. I just love cool old stuff. And I would hang out with him all the time, and he had this rack. I never forget it. He had this rack of like Hawaiian shirts, nothing too crazy, but just, you know, good, looks the part. And man, I swear to God, he never sold one. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, people were just not ready for it.
You'd think that would be so poppin' in the Gold Coast at that time. Like, come on.
Yeah, I know. The sense of humor side is just weird. I mean, it's weird back home, man, because like a lot of it, like I said, is people dressing, trying to be ironic or funny for like the weekend, and they'll buy like some crazy polyester shirt with big lapels, and then they'll take it back on Monday. You know what I mean? So, but it's different now. But that was my introduction, and it was me, Blake at the time, and like 2 or 3 older guys for the longest time, from like probably like the age of 13, 14 up until when I left when I was 24. There was nothing, at least where I was on the Gold Coast. Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, yeah, for sure. But where I was, there was nothing. I didn't have a credit card. I was always just on the dole, which is welfare, and I was just playing in punk rock bands and didn't really have any money. So my friend Mick, he had a credit card, so I was just always at his house buying t-shirts off eBay on his credit card. And like back then, spending stupid money.
What a good friend, dude. Fuck.
Oh, like I'd pay him. But you know, not always on time. But yeah. And I remember, dude, being so overwhelmed and spending like the first time do you remember that first time that you ever found out about eBay and that you can there's anything you want more or less. You can just type it in. It's just so overwhelming. And I remember buying this Loverboy, that band Loverboy, like working for the weekend Loverboy. I remember buying, I don't even fucking like them, such a poser. I remember buying this 3/4 sleeve baseball tee, and it was like $200, and I was the coolest motherfucker. I was like, 17 years old or whatever. But yeah, eBay changed a lot. And I spent a lot of money.
For me, it was different because when eBay came about, there was still vintage stores here, and there was like shit was still somewhat accessible.
Yeah,
and we were actually we were picking even in those early eBay days. But I just remember like the technology was like eBay. This is an auction online. It was just fucking wild that it was even out there.
Yeah, no, it was. And like, I remember the only t-shirt, I found like 2 t-shirts in my whole, like seriously, from like fucking 13, 14 up to like 24, like that. I would find a lot of like other cool shit, like tons of cool furniture, records, whatever, but clothes was just so hard. Because, even at that point, I was looking at like old Rolling Stone magazines and like I wanted this shit that these guys were wearing. It's all made in USA. So the likelihood of it coming all the way over the other side of the world is very slim. So I get it, but it was frustrating. I could never find anything. And I remember the day I found, and it was a nothing shirt, but dude, I wore it to fucking death. It was like, we see them all the time picking, like, those Singapore like souvenir shirts where it might be like a guy kind of pulling a rickshaw or whatever. And it's just like, it was
Cartoon
like an 80s. Yeah. And it was all blowing out and shit, and it was way too tight. And I was like, "What's happening, guys?" And I loved that thing.
Like this came from the racks. You're like, "Yo, I got this."
I honestly don't think I've ever had a pick as high, as big as that, because it was just for years, and then all of a sudden something actually old. And even not knowing about tags and stuff at that point, I at least had the foresight to just know like this has been on the planet for a longer period of time than everything else I've seen for the last 10 years. And it was such a buzz, man.
So did that first store that you went to, the guy with the leather jacket, did they have t-shirts?
No, he didn't have t-shirts. He was like a rockabilly guy. He had tons of denim. And at that point in time, I wasn't thinking about really till, like I said, till I started working for you. I just like cool shit, but I wasn't like, oh, cool, Big E's, Selvage denim, whatever, workwear. Yeah. Rayon Hawaiian shirts, whatever it is. Now, if I had a time machine, because I can't remember his prices, but I'm sure they were pretty reasonable, But yeah, he was like a rockabilly guy. So.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so let's fast forward to coming to America, I want to say, but you came to Canada.
Okay.
You came to Canada. Yeah. What year was it?
2008. The start of 2008.
You originally came to Canada on like with no expectations, or did you come to Canada thinking you were going to work in music?
Yeah, so I mean, I was in a band for the longest time. We broke up. I started doing some session work, and I liked it, and I thought that's what I wanted to do. And I only did it for a couple of months, and I was just like, I've made up my mind. I'm fucking going. And I sold. My dad had the most like a huge record collection that he ended up giving to me. I've sold all that.
Explain session work just in case people don't understand what that is.
Yeah, so let's say you're an artist, you're a singer, you go in, you have some songs, and you want live drums, then you could call someone like me, come in, I try to learn the song, bash it out, you pay me, and that's it. And like I said, I didn't do it for any big artists, whatever. It was definitely my goal at that point. But I did it for just a few kind of like local indie acts, a couple that were sort of signed to development deals and that sort of thing. And it was enough to get my toe into I knew I was good enough to do it, and I knew I wanted to do it, and I just knew that there was no work. It's like go to the epicenter of the thing. So I was like, I'm going to live in the States. I don't know how. I'm just going to figure it out. And it was too hard, so I'm like, Canada's the next bet. And my mindset was, go to Vancouver. Blake's there.
Then I can get a backpack, and I can fucking pack a few granola bars, and I can headtail over the mountains, and I'm in.
Which is exactly what I did until I got banned. So I get here and I just straight away, man, I remember going up to some like hippie looking dude with dreads. I figured he'd know, and he did. And I was like, what is the local street press? What is the thing with like, ads for musicians want or whatever? And he's like, oh, it's the Georgia Straight. So I grab it, nothing. I just keep doing this religiously until I meet this girl, and she gives me the number of this guy, Steve, and I start playing in his band and sort of snowboard. And all of a sudden, I'm starting to play in bands in Vancouver. I hadn't met you at this point. And then I just randomly go on Craigslist LA and I just type in drummer wanted, and I see this ad, and it was, in hindsight, such clickbait, but it was like, do you love music? Do you want to travel the world? I'm like, yes and yes. So I emailed them and they're like, do you have anything? And at the time I had this like drum solo thing on YouTube, and I sent that to them, and like, when can you be here? And I was like, I don't know. Like, can you be here in 3 days? I'm like, yep. And I couldn't. I had fucking no money. So again, I just begged mum for some cash. I had like $250. It was too last minute to get a flight. So I got this. The cheapest way to get there was this Greyhound bus that stopped at every fucking stop. You think that that's, dude, it was what should have been. I mean, if you're driving straight from here to LA, like, have you done that before? Have you done that drive?
Yeah, that's like 20 hours straight or something.
This was 3 days solid, and it was just like, you drive an hour, stop for 10 minutes, drive an hour, stop for 10 minutes, and it was fucking brutal. But I get there. There's a crazy another story associated with that, but we'll save that for another time. But I get there, meet the guys, didn't really like them too much, but I'm like, okay, this is a stepping stone. And then I'm playing there in this terrible band, these terrible people, just the whole time being like, don't worry about it. Just, these guys are going to sponsor you once you're sponsored. Very naive, had no idea. Once you're sponsored, you can peace out. Once you get that paperwork that says you can legally stay here and do this. And my plan was, I'm going straight to Nashville. Not for country music, but from a musician, there's so much work there.
Yeah.
And it came the end of my 3 months on a tourist visa. And this ties into when I met you. And I'm like, dude, what's going on? Like, where's my visa here? Like, I'm getting a bit panicky. And they're like, we've misjudged it. It's going to take a little bit longer than what we anticipated. So you have the visa for Canada. Go back, chill out for a week or two, come back, you'll have another 3 months, and within that period, we'll have you sorted. But when I went to go back, the border guard goes next, he grabs my passport, and he's like, dude, you were just here. I'm like, yeah. He's like, go sit over there. And that turned into my bags being ripped off, the bus leaving, 4-hour interrogation. I got fucking banned and marched back over to, dude, my whole life was ruined. Everything that I've worked, I started playing drums when I was 12. Everything from then up to there was to live in the States. And in that moment, shattered. It was the most depressed I've ever been. But one door closes, another one opens. And then all of a sudden I'm with Blake in Whistler.
Is that where we met, in Whistler with Blake?
Yeah. And I had just they took me up there, Marty and Blake, because I was like fucking morbidly depressed. This had just happened. They're like, come and party with us.
Crazy. So just to clarify this story, so you went in on a tourist visa originally to play, and then they said they were going to get you the visa, and then that was just bullshit, and nothing went through?
In fairness to them, I don't think it was bullshit. I just think that they misjudged what exactly that entailed. Like, so the band that I was playing with, they're called Snow in Africa. They were terrible. But the singer Nick Soliday had a development deal at the time, I think with Warner. And so, there was all these things being spewed at me that made me think, okay, this seems legit. Therefore, if these people are involved, somebody must know what they're talking about. Well, it turns out it was all bullshit. It was all fucking a lie. It's the craziest story. So I get fucked, basically. And I think their intention was, we like this guy. They like the fact that I was from Australia, like to sell the band just as a bit more of an international thing, I guess. I don't know. But they just misjudged it. They completely misjudged it.
And then that banned you for like 10 years, did it not?
It banned me for 10 years, but it was a lifetime ban. It was the weirdest thing. The ban was, okay, so just to make a really long story really short, I get the initial refusal. I don't get banned at that point. I just get, you cannot come in now, go see the consulate, sort your shit out. So I go see the consulate, and I go in, the lady's really cool, and she's like, no, sorry, rewind. I speak with the management of the band, and they're like, listen, man, we can get another drummer, but we want you, so let's try one last thing. Go in and we want you to apply for a business visa. That way we can start paying, because I was getting paid really well there, but it was all like cash in hand. That way it's going to save our ass, and we can, if nobody gets fucked. And I'm like, yeah, but I basically just told them, because when I got in trouble, I was really downplaying the band. I was just like, oh, I'm young, naive. I didn't know you could essentially border hop. I just love America, USA. I wanted to go back and see the fucking whatever, I don't know, landmarks and shit. And that didn't work. And so, yeah, basically Man, it's a long, confusing thing, but in a nutshell,
Yeah.
I made the border guard at the representative at the American consulate in Vancouver. I made them really suspicious of me because all of a sudden I've gone from saying I'm a tourist to now I want a business visa. And it fucked me. And so I got refused entry and I asked, when can I come back? And they're like, you can't come back. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, you can never come back as a tourist. You can come back as a performer, but in order to do that, you have to take this red flag off your name. So it was this shit thing. So I just put it in the too hard basket. That's like
taking Crocodile Dundee's knife, stabbing it in your heart. And
dude,
like, as an Australian who came here to get to America to play music, and they say, I must have fucking been so hard to handle.
Oh, dude, honestly, like, I'm a real brave face type of guy. And that I've had a few moments in my life, but that one was like, that was really fucking hard. But, I just got over it. And then, like I said, and then we have the next chapter,
Totally. So let's get into the next chapter. So Blake and you came up to Whistler to party, which I don't even really remember because, fuck, I was probably wasted the whole time.
Yeah, you were. So was I. So was all of us.
Did I already know Blake at that time?
Yeah, I guess so. So Blake that was the other reason why I wanted to come over here too, because Blake had, who was my other kind of vintage buddy growing up, he had come over to Canada like 2 years prior, fell in love with the place, starts working for Mintage, shout out Skylar, and, he just raves about it. He's like, oh, it's the best, man. And so he really sold it on me. And so when I came over, we were like best mates, so we hung out all the time. And I guess just you guys had already had some sort of connection through Vintage. And so we're up in Whistler. I remember it so vividly because it was the most exciting shit to me. You were so nonchalant about the way that you asked me. Because I remember we were sitting there and we're all just drinking. We all got along. You and I got along really well, like a house on fire, and we're making each other laugh and shit. And then I remember you said to Blake, he'd probably be pretty good at picking, hey? And Blake goes, yeah. And he goes, do you want a job? And I go, yes. And dude, because I went from the most depressed guy to like, fuck drums. Like, this is the other shit I love. So yeah, I remember it so well, man. And then I started with you the next week. And then I met John.
That is such a fucking great story. See, I don't remember the meeting, but obviously I remember when you started working for us, which was rad. And that was like, that was a really fun time. The Dust Bowl was so popping back then. You met John, who was already working for us at the time, who you then started a band with later on.
Yep. Yeah, man.
And I guess that really started your deeper understanding and education into the game and Vintage, right?
100%. Like, and I've been really vocal about you and Jesse being probably my biggest mentors, really. I always had a very, like, to blow my own trumpet, I did have a good eye. I've always had a good eye for old stuff. And I did mostly furniture. I sold furniture back home in Australia. Not like too religiously, definitely not for a living. It was more of a side hustle. I actually once owned Michael Hutchins from In Excess' bar. He's like 70s bar. I owned his fucking bar. Yeah. So I loved old stuff and I had a good eye for it. But I mean, you guys were definitely picking for you guys and I think within, I don't know, I'd say probably like 2 months. And yeah, man, I fucking just fell in love. Yeah. It's the best.
That's, and you get to see everything. You finally understand what that Americana is, and all that shit that you never could get in Australia is like actually available.
And we used to have fun too, like, because, you would come in and if I found something rad, I'd be like, oh, fucking Drewy, go long. Remember, we'd like do like gridiron passes and shit, and you're like, oh, fucking, come on. And it'd be like a blue bar. We'd be like so excited and shit. And yeah, man, that was a really fun period because that was the time when you just started building Evers and Frank Vancouver as well.
Yeah, so that was before we opened the store, dude.
Yeah.
And that was we had the Whistler store. That's why you came up to party with us in Whistler. So our Whistler store was 2007.
Yeah.
So yeah, I probably met you like 2007, 2008, and the beginnings, dude. The beginnings. I was like still in my 20s then. We would fucking crack beers every day at the Dust Bowl and fucking kick back.
Yeah, man.
Super
fun. It was a really fucking fun time. I remember pretty well actually, considering I was wasted the whole time, but I do have like a pretty good memory of those years. And and it was also too, the other reason why I remember it so well is because I have your dad's voice still echoing in my fucking head. Kerr, move the world. Well, I love Dave. This is fucking such a champ. But
Yeah.
He's good times.
The legend.
times.
So, let's get into Dead Union now. Let's get into some brass tacks here. You are Dead Union. You've been doing it for how many years now? Have you been on your own solo?
Since like 2000. I don't know. Like 2011 or something. Something like that.
And
whenever I stopped working for you, is pretty much when I started it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like you said, you were into t-shirts as a kid, but me and Jesse always knew you as like the t-shirt guy. Like out of any pickers, any in vintage at the time, even after you started on your own, like you just had way more t-shirts than anybody. And I give you kudos to that because you look at the market now and you know, it's crazy where it's at. It's all fucking t-shirts, but you were always all fucking t-shirts. I mean, obviously you had other stuff too, but like that was your focus.
It was. I think also too, it was because I have really bad ADHD. And I think if you have ADHD and you're attracted to picking, you'll do well. Because having ADHD, you're a pleasure seeker. You're constantly trying to tap into like endorphins in your brain that are going to give you pleasure. And what better job for that than picking rag? Because it's mundane, oh my God, pick is high. Mundane, oh my God, pick is high. You know what I mean? It's this constant thing. T-shirts gave you the most like I'm like a heroin addict. It's like I'm looking for crack rocks. It gave me the most amount of pleasure because you had more chance of finding cool shit in the T-shirt section way more than what you would in any other section in the whole rag house, period. So I think because of that, I mean, I love art. And so that's what T-shirts are, really. I mean, that's what it is. It's forget about how old the thing is. It's somebody's art and they've put it on a thing. It could basically be on a wall, but instead it's on our chest. So it's just so fun. Finding like an old horsehide jacket is still a thrill, but there's no better feeling, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, there's no better fucking feeling than getting a cluster. You know, when you open a bale and like, oh my God, oh my God, and they're just coming, and you just know it's one dude's collection that his wife probably fucking threw out, you know what I mean?
And so, there's more of it. There's more of it, so you have like, it takes you longer. You'll get like a lot more hits of that dopamine. You find more frequent
That's
things.
the word I was looking for. Dopamine.
Although you don't get like, you might not find that crazy thing, but it's like, it's more consistent. And obviously it's just what you were into for sure. Okay. So let's talk vintage for a minute. Strictly what, like of all your time in picking and selling vintage, like give us some of like your favorite picks.
I think when I first, you were cool because like, remember you had fired me, but I was a shit employee, so I don't blame you. But then I was like, okay, that's cool, but can you still let me come and pick for myself like one day a week or whatever? And you're like, yeah, for a little bit. I had found when I was picking for you, I had found that grizzly, right? And then I remember you getting so fucking excited. I had no idea what it was. I knew it was old and cool. So I give it to you. I'm like, okay, fucking guy's got like massive wood over this, crazy. And then when I started picking at the other one for myself, like one day a week, I found within probably like a 2-month period when I was working for you, I found that Grizz for you. And then when I was picking the other one, I found one myself, which I ended up selling to you. The craziest thing about that is I remember Jesse actually saying to me, you'll never, ever find one ever again. And me thinking, dude, what are you talking about? I found 2 in like 2 months. I have never found another one again. It's been 10 years. I will probably never find another one again. And like that market has definitely died a little bit and dipped. It'll always have its Japanese collectors and whatnot. But at the time, like...
Oh, that was hot, dude.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny you say that. I haven't even heard the term grizzly jacket. I just like was like, whoa, I fucking forgot about those. Like, I haven't even heard the term in so long.
Well, it's just not on our radar even thinking about these days. You know, when a fucking Blink-182 t-shirt goes for almost the same price, it's like, you know,
yeah, exactly.
Why even think about it?
For those that don't know who are listening, a grizzly jacket is a horsehide jacket mixed with some kind of animal fur on the outside, which they're super rare. They're
almost looks like a vest over the top of the leather.
Yeah, and they're 30s or 40s, could probably be earlier. But to be honest, like they fucking rot because mouton, which a lot of them were mouton, which is sheepskin, will rot away over time, which like you obviously have found tons of like old bombers and shit that are just rotted, right?
Yeah, like the like the old sort of flight jackets with the shirling lining. I mean, like you pick it up and they fall to pieces. It's almost like the equivalent of a dry rot in that high-end vintage world.
Yeah.
I mean, it's heartbreaking. Like, how many times have you found those jackets? And I don't even get excited when I see them. I mean, I don't find them obviously too often, but maybe 1 or 2 a year, something from that period with that really thin, almost pleather-like leather shell just disintegrates, man. And it's,
Yeah.
So yeah.
those grizzly jackets, that would often happen to them, and to find them in good condition was super rare. And now I don't even know, like, fuck, so many more of them probably are just rotted out. And like,
I've had good, like, other memorable picks have not necessarily been inside the dust caves, but I think I've told you this one before. This was a fellow store, which I guess we won't name, in Vancouver, and they were having a 50% off sale, and it was Boxing Day. And I walk in, and I'm with Kelsey, my wife, and I just start laughing. I don't know about you, but if I see something that everybody else thinks is just garbage and it's amazing, I just start giggling like a little schoolgirl. Like, oh my God, I'm going to make so much money. Oh my God. And right there on the rack is this like mint condition Black Bear hickory stripe engineer coat. But it is like, dude, it's borderline dead stock. I think from memory I sold it to Larry, funnily enough, Heller's Cafe. But I think I paid like $15 or something for it. Yeah. That was a memorable pick. And I think within like the next day, within like 2 hours, that was also the other thing too. You'd find something, you'd list it on eBay, and if certain people message you, Brian, Snappy, Snappy Gaps, Heller's Cafe, if they message you, you were onto something good. And I think I sold it to him as like a buy now. I can't remember what it was, but it was definitely very good profit. Yeah. That was exciting.
So that's a wicked topic to talk about. Vancouver used to be a fucking gold mine for just straight up vintage shopping. Vancouver, as you know, went through a massive shift in vintage stores. Like when you moved here, would have been Mintage, True Value, used on Robson. No, not used on Robson, but used on Granville or Bang On, whatever it was called. Cherry Bomb was on commercial, probably still then.
Retro Rock.
Retro Rock. Oh fuck, dude, there was so many good ones, and you could literally do a rounds.
What was the one downstairs?
True Value.
True Value. Yeah.
So you could do the rounds of these stores, and like everybody had their own different things that they would price higher out of the market. But then I swear, like pre-Rose Bowl, every time I would just drive around Vancouver, grab like a rag bag full of shit from all these stores and make great money.
I honestly think for a short window, it was just you and I doing it. Seriously. For like certain pieces. They just weren't on people's radars. They were on my radar from getting the knowledge from you and Jess. And then, I was really just selling on eBay at that point because I couldn't get into the States. Otherwise, I would have loved to have been joining you guys at the Rose Bowl. But yeah, it really did feel for a very short period of time, maybe like a year 2 tops. You're right. Every store, I would find something. And to them, it was just a nothing thing. And I wish to God it was still that way, but it's not. People learn eventually.
Yeah, and it's everyone has their own market. Like a lot of these stores didn't care to a degree, and they just really wanted to like make their retail money on like fashion pieces, and like if something slipped in the fashion grade, then you fucking scoop it. Yeah. But then Vancouver had this massive change where a lot of those stores fell off. Well, Mintage is still here, but I think everyone else on our list is gone.
Pretty much, man. Yeah, it really, and it seemed very instant, like very just like bam, 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 bam.
Yeah, it was within a year, and then there was down to like me, Mintage, and like one other maybe, and then then the new generation started to open up, and now again there's like a lot of different people, but again it's totally a younger generation of people who are owning the vintage stores now. Yeah,
it really is, and I mean like because it's so t-shirt heavy, a lot of these kids, like you really can if you wish to, like you absolutely can facilitate filling a store through just thrift shopping based on what the current demand for things are. But if you were to rewind, like, 10 years earlier, what people wanted was, I guess, quote unquote, more traditional vintage. You know what I mean? There was a little bit more push that way. But now when you've got like Harry Potter t-shirts popping or whatever, the likelihood, like you can find it now.
If you opened a vintage store, like you said, in that era, you would have pants, denim, jackets, dress up clothes, outerwear, sweaters, seasonal stuff. Like you would have the gamut of fashion. Nowadays, when I hear someone opening a vintage store, I just assume it's 100% t-shirts, or they might have some crew necks, or they might be like, we're going to put in Carhartt because that's popping. But like, it's, like you said, it's 90% t-shirts now. And I guess it is easy to fill. It's still difficult to fill with like the right shit. There's a lot of people, I don't know. I guess with thrifting you can do it.
I'm not saying that your store is going to be good. But it's just easier to, like, if you want to have a brick and mortar, it's a lot easier now, given the fact that the stuff that's popping off it is easier to find. People, if you're just relying on the thrift, then maybe not. But at the end of the day, if it's fucking older, it's going to be harder to find. It's just,
totally.
Yeah.
So this brings us to the point in the show. Somebody came up with this idea, I forget who, called Big Burns. Okay, Curb? This is, I want to know of a time you got harsh burned on an item. Like you picked something and you sold it for stupid cheap, and then you realize later,
probably
like,
you.
Shit. But I remember I paid you big money for that grizzly.
No, you did. You absolutely did. No, okay. I know there's got to be so many. What it more is there was a couple of burns, which I'll get to, but what it more is, and I'm sure you can relate to this as well, is thinking back to what was on my $5 t-shirt tables in the early days of the flea market is exactly what is popping now. Because you'd go picking, and obviously the whole point of staying in this business is just knowing what's hitting and trying your best to find those things. On your journey of finding those things, you're going to find somewhat mediocre stuff, hence your $5 table and your cheaper items. But if I think back to like the first days of doing, the Blim markets or whatever on Main Street or whatever in like 2011-ish or whatever. Like if I think back, man, I know for a fact there would have been like MC Escher t-shirts on my like $5 table, all over print nonsense, because it just wasn't a thing. Everybody wanted 80s fucking band tees at that point, you know what I mean? So that stings, but that's life. But as far as being stung on something, I'm not sure if I want to name the person, so maybe I won't, but we know him both. He's in LA. He's stung me many a time. But in fairness to him, I don't get too butthurt because there was no gun to my head to sell the thing. You know what I mean?
Of course, yeah.
So keeping that in mind, however, I was a little too quick. I found this leather jacket at the rag. It was when another rag had opened and is no longer here. So there was a short window that it was there. And I was one of the first people that was allowed there. And I start picking, I think my first week out there, now I know what it is. At the time, I just thought it was I thought it was 40s. It was this kind of, sort of like 3/4, almost car club, horsehide sort of jacket. And it had interesting details, like it was like double-breasted, and it was almost like those like bucko ones with like the metal fucking, you know what I'm talking about? I feel like Jesse posted one the other day. It's like they're like 40s horsehide jackets, motorcycle jackets,
like a fireman clasp kind of thing.
Yeah, no, it's like they're just snaps, but they're like silver buttons that go up like that. It was similar to that.
He posted that crazy Bucco style.
Yeah, Bucco. Okay. Sorry, not Bucko. Anyway, but I find this old leather jacket.
I thought you were talking about bucking bronco or something. Yeah. Okay, I know what you're talking about.
I always mispronounce that. So I find this jacket. And I was needing money for something. I think to buy a ticket home or some shit. I posted it, and within like half an hour, the guy that will remain nameless contacts me. He's like, "Hey man, $1,000." I'm like, "Sounds good to me." And then I sold it to him, and I was contacted by another big wig. He's like, "Hey man, have you sold this?" And before I could say yes, he's like, "I'll give you $5,000." And I'm like, and I'd already sold it. He paid, just sent it off. It is what it is. That one, and then it turns out it was way older. It was from the 20s. It was like an aviation piece. It had no markings on it, so it was kind of just up. I knew it was at least 40s, but I just didn't know. You know what I mean? You can't know everything. That one stung because obviously having the $4,000 that you missed out on. But man, I honestly don't.
Wait, though, that piece though, are you talking about the piece that came from the leather shop?
No. I did well on that.
Okay.
No. This is, yeah. And I've definitely had thank God. I mean, I wouldn't be in this business for very long if I wasn't having a better batting average. You know what I mean? Like I've definitely had more success stories than failures. But that one stung. But it is what it is, and you can't get hung up on it because
No, you
it's
can't.
all part
And
of
that's
it.
the lesson here, because everyone loves to talk about the big burns, but the lesson is we all fucking have them, and you got to find your own place in it, and you got to learn through burns sometimes.
I've definitely had way more opposition from the other side of it, of somebody pricing something out, me buying it at their price, giving them their money. They didn't do their research. That's on them. Me selling it for pretty good profit, them finding out and being butthurt. I've had to deal with that so many times. Have you?
Yeah.
Have you had? And I'm always just like, fuck off. You have the internet, guy.
For sure, yeah. You know, it's been a couple times recently when I've sold shit, but then I bought like 4 years ago off people, and they're like, "Fuck, I only charge you $100 for that." And I'm like, "Dude, that was 4 years ago. That was a different world we live in.
It's a different world. It's a completely different world."
That's like me putting 100 into a stock and hoping it goes up, and like I scored on that one. But then there's probably times, like we've had big burns too, but I can't remember like really specifics where people have like freaked on us about that shit. I mean, I've told you probably on our live, we'll talk about Hogan later, but Retro Rock kicked me out at one point, and this was going back to like how we used to do the rounds of all the stores, because he like had his eye on me, and he thought that I was, again, probably just because I was making profit on his stuff, but I would just go in, pay his price, shop like any average person, try to be low-key incognito, but I guess I went in too much, and then he basically said, "I don't want you coming here anymore." I was like, what the fuck, dude?
Yeah, it's never made any sense to me. I have so many resellers that come to my shop, whatever land. I'm stoked. I'm like, fuck, the more of you, the better. I mean, I'm pricing it at my price. I've got my shit that I love over here. I'm happy for it to sell to whoever. I don't care. Man, if I sell a t-shirt for $10, and we've definitely hooked up a lot of people on Hogan, and there's so much, like, there's a constant cycle. It is what it is. Fucking move on.
Yeah, you know? That's the thing about not being attached, you know, like letting the energy flow, letting your shit go, and also like knowing where you sit in the market. Yeah. Where like, you know, I'm happy to, like, we wholesale, we retail, we do reworks, just like you, like, you know, you'll send some boxes out to people who can resell it. If somebody comes in your store and buys something at your price and resells it, great. Like and that's a better business to be in one sense, because you're the guy to the guys. Yeah, there's more money from them because the average customer like doesn't always have cash anyway.
Yeah, exactly, man. Yeah, so I don't know. I've had a couple of burns, but I've always just put it down to that's the rite of passage. That's how you learn. You know, there's no other way to learn. So I don't get too butthurt on that.
Okay, so crazy fucking year. You had a crazier year than everyone. You know, for people listening, Kirby spent a full month in the hospital. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep.
So I want to talk about that. Obviously, like, you came out of it. You're here. You're alive. We're fucking grateful, and you learned a lot of shit. So you want to tell us a story of your wild year?
The first thing I learned is that morphine is mad fun. That's the first thing I learned. No, kids.
We all knew that already, Curve.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a wild story. So basically, in a nutshell, about probably like 2 years ago, I started getting like some kind of weird pains in my stomach, and then all of a sudden, just doomsday, there's blood in the bowl. I'm not going to get too graphic. Enough to make me freak the fuck out, as any of us would. Straight to the doctor, and the doctor's like, it's probably nothing, you know, if it's bright red, it's very common, probably just like some fucking hemorrhoid or whatever. I'm like, oh, okay. And it just didn't go away. And then I go and I just basically put my foot down, like, I need to be referred to a specialist. This is fucking bullshit. I get a specialist. Now, I want to say this to people. We have this mindset of, if we're going to go to a restaurant, we check out Yelp reviews. Let's see what other people have to say about the food before we put it in our bodies. If we're going to go and book an Airbnb, we do the same, so on and so forth. We don't commonly think to check the reviews of a doctor or a dentist or whatever. I think because subconsciously we just think, well, if they've got a plaque on the wall and they've been through all this, you know what I mean?
Is there actually a way to do that? Like, do they have reviews for doctors?
Absolutely there is. Yeah. I don't know the website. I can't remember it off by heart, but you can just Google it. There absolutely is. I mean, you just type in any of your local GP's name into Google, there'll be something that come up. Had I have done that, my life may have been very different. So I go, see this lady. I will out her because she sucks. Dr. Ty, Vancouver. Don't fuck with this lady. She's a gastrologist. And yeah, so she basically was like, I think it's IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, which I've now come to learn is essentially just what doctors say when they're not sure. They're still trying to figure it out. It's a huge umbrella. There could be a billion things that your body internally, your digestive tract is not dealing with. It could be an intolerance to, wheat or lactose, whatever it is, right? So we're trying to fine tune my diet. And I've always eaten okay in terms of fiber and stuff because my mum was she was such a health freak growing up that we never had any soda or stuff in the house. So I actually love vegetables. It's not a chore for me. And she's like, okay, we're going to increase your fiber. And that was sort of my first red flag, because I sort of felt like it was already pretty high. But I'm like, all right, you've got a plaque on the wall. So I go with that, and it's not getting better. It's getting worse. It's getting much worse. She's like, stay on it. And then eventually I wake up one morning in early April of 2020, really the start of the craziness for the pandemic, feeling that my body was, the best way I can describe it is it felt like my body was being filled with concrete. And I look down and I'm in bed and I'd say to Kels, my wife, I'm like, what the fuck? And it's just like my top intestine is just like ballooning out. And the worst pain I've ever experienced, without a doubt. And so it's called a flare, and I'll get to that. So straight to hospital, I'm like, get in the car, we go straight to hospital. And I finally, after like a year and a bit at this point of just not knowing what's going on, I finally get some answers. So I go in, get a scan, and the doctor, great doctor, he's like, you have what is called ulcerative colitis, and you're having what is called a flare. You have a very bad, extensive case of it, and you aren't going anywhere. So I get put on all this treatment, steroids and whatnot. My body just keeps rejecting it. And they keep upping the steroids, upping it, hoping that my body, because basically what it is, ulcerative colitis is just a massively overactive immune system. So my troops are shooting good and bad. Well, they should only be shooting bad. So they're fucking up everything. So what the steroids is trying to do is basically turn your immune system off to give your internal situation some time to heal. And you just hope that your body is going to let that happen. And in my case, my body was like, no, that's not happening. So I go home, I have this month of hell. I'm not going to be graphic, but it was brutal. Going to the bathroom like 80 times a day, losing so much weight, in so much agony. The only way that I could stop being... This is after
your month in the hospital?
No. This is, I go to the hospital. I stay there for like a night. They give me all this steroids and they're giving me this treatment. So like, go home. This is your new treatment plan. Hopefully your body reacts to this. So I go back within 3 weeks. I have this 3-week window of fucking hell. It's getting worse and worse and worse. And eventually I just look at Cal. I'm like, I have to go to hospital. And she knew. So we go to hospital and they're like, well, yeah, this is really bad. And so, yeah, ended up staying there for a month. And there's just so many crazy stories with that. And instead of going too heavily into that, I might, if people are interested, on Dead Union, my Instagram, there's a link to the podcast episode that I really explain in detail what happened, because Drew and I would be here forever otherwise. But essentially, they just put me on a crazy dose of steroids where I had to be monitored, and it wasn't working. And the worst thing about it, this is during the start of the pandemic. So I'm allowed no visitors. Kelsey is like in tears and fucking Skyping with me every second of the day. I'm surrounded by old people dying or coughing. I'm the youngest person
Kelsey
in there.
Couldn't even come in.
No one could. No one.
Wow.
Doctors were coming in like hazmat suits and shit, like this was really when panic was at its highest. We've learned so much more about it now, but at that time,
nobody understood what was happening and being extra safe. Yeah.
No one understood. And the hospital was really overrun. This is a small hospital in Maple Ridge. I was somewhat priority because of my age. There were a lot of people that were in there were elderly because of COVID, and so many of them had it. So, that month in there, there's so many fucking ebbs and flows, highs and lows, obviously. But the worst thing was my body was just not taking to these steroids. And I'll tell you one story which really sums up my whole experience in there, which is now where I am at. So the doctor's like, okay, your body's not reacting to this. So we have one other option before we have to do surgery. And that's basically, you've been given, for lack of a better term, you've been given bronze and silver steroids. Now we're going to give you the gold medal. Like this shit is insane. So they're like, we have to get it from Germany. It takes about a week. The government has to sign off on it. It's like really wild shit. I'm like, okay. And he's like, the scary thing is it is going to literally turn off your immune system, which is not a good thing with COVID because you need your immune system to fight this thing. And if I get it during that period, there's a very good chance it would take my life. So I'm really scared. And I'm like, fuck, okay. So that I get told that night, I'm in bed, just I'm in so much pain, but every like hour getting jacked up with morphine, riding that wave, loving it. And pain would come again, repeat. And then I get woken, I guess in one of my morphine states, they're constantly coming in and checking your temperature and vitals to see if you're showing any COVID symptoms, right? So I guess I had, unbeknownst to me, I'd had a temperature spike that put me just over the protocol threshold for the hospital where I now need to be put in quarantine to see if I have this thing. So these two ladies come in like a fucking hazmat suits, man. I get woken up. Oh, Mr. Fisher, Kobe. I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, we have to give you a COVID test. Your temperature's gone up. I'm like, okay. So this was the first run of the swabs you see go up the nose. Well, the first run of those apparently didn't have much give. They're like almost wooden pool cues, whereas the ones now have a little bit of give to them.
Yeah.
So I had broke my nose when I was a kid playing rugby and it never really healed right. I had botched surgery. So I could never breathe out of my left nostril at all. I was meant to get deviated septum surgery for the longest time. In my comatose state, I forget to mention this to her. And she's like, okay, darling, this might hurt a little bit, might be a little uncomfortable. She goes, fucking whack. And you just hear as it breaks through cartilage from when my nose got fucked up when I was 12 years old up until, 36 or whatever. Blood goes, shh. It was how these nurses reacted was so scary. And they both freaked out and looked at each other like, oh my God, I've never seen that happen. The other one's like, this is inhumane. And then I'm like, and they're like, okay. I'm like, listen, do it in the other nostril. I'm going to grip the sheets. And the pain was so much. It was so brutal. But, they have to do it. So I grip the sheets, whack, same thing. And then she goes, not as bad, but you can hear it breaking through shit. And she goes, do you work in a dusty environment? I go, yeah. Guys, pickers out there, wear your fucking masks. If you are in these dust caves, please wear a dust mask. There's so many health problems that you can and will face, and I am evidence of this. My nose was so, you think that you're free, but just years of concrete dust compacting way up in your nostril canals. So it was really painful. I get marched down. They're like, grab your stuff. We have to put you into quarantine. So I go down to the COVID ward. The doors open up of the elevator, and on the right-hand side is people that are positive with COVID. On the left-hand side is people that are awaiting their results. So I'm in this wheelchair. I'm terrified. I get wheeled over to my room. I'm lucky that they give me my own room to myself. But she opens the door and she's like, we have to close the door behind you. It's not locked, but you can't come out. Okay. Closes the door, still in this wheelchair. At this point, I'm skin and bone. I look like I'm fucking skin and bone, man. And I sort of get up out of the wheelchair and I look around my room and I have my bed, which is, open, ready for me to jump in. The next bed is made. The next bed is made. But then this bed over here is not made. And my mind just starts fucking going a million miles an hour thinking, well, what's happening? Did this person have it and is now over there? Did someone die? I'm freaking out. So that night, I'm just waiting. I'm waiting to get my results back. I have no idea how long it's going to take, but I'm really scared. I want to be back up where it's safe. Because my immune system's so fucked, and the next day I'm meant to, or very soon, I'm meant to start this crazy treatment, which is literally going to turn my immune system off. I don't want to be anywhere near the likelihood of getting it so much more down here, right? So I'm waiting. First night, make it through. Second night, I am going back from the bathroom. I have my little private bathroom, and as I'm walking to my bed, I put my hand down on the mattress and I hear this bang, bang, bang. And sorry, it was this arm. And then my fucking shoulder, the skin is up like this. And I'm in the worst pain, dude. And I fall to the ground. I hit the call button. Bang, 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 hitting the call button. They're so overrun in the hospital. There's old people fucking screaming and dying. There's 2 nurses. It's 2:00 in the morning. I'm next to the bed. So, oh, fuck. Hitting the call button. Upstairs, someone's there in 30 seconds. Here, it was like 20 minutes later. She comes in. I'm like, oh my God, I don't know what's happened, but I heard this popping sound and my shoulder, I don't know what's going on. And she's like, okay. Okay. She helps me get back into bed. She's like, wait here. 20 minutes later, Mr. Fisher, get in this wheelchair. You're being rushed to an emergency scan. I go and get a scan, and it turns out that I had ruptured my bowel and I was dying. I was septic. And like I had to be, within 10 minutes, I was in, strapped down on an operating table. I had all these doctors and nurses. I'm still freaking out on morphine. I'm in crazy pain. I have no idea that I'm about to be cut open and have my large intestine removed from my body. I'm septic. I'm fucking dying. And I have no idea. They didn't tell me. They're just like, yep, you have to go to surgery. This guy comes in, and this is another lesson about trusting your gut and putting someone's feelings to the side if it's your own well-being. And I didn't do that, and I wish I fucking had of. This guy comes in, and his energy was off. Even though in my comatose state and out of it from morphine, I could see that he wasn't confident. And he was the anesthesiologist, and his job was to put, it's what pregnant, when ladies are giving birth, epidural? The epidural.
Epidural, yeah, that's right.
And he put in, and he's like, oh, fuck. And I could hear him sort of like muttering under his breath. Like he kept missing the spot. I kept testing. I could feel it. Like, oh, shit. And he eventually supposedly gets it. And I just was like, oh, something's off about this guy. Long story short, I wake up on the operating table feeling the full wrath of being cut 4 inches underneath my belly button to 4 inches on top of my belly button. I apparently punched a nurse in the head, like just thrashing around, not on purpose, because the epidural was not put in the right spot. So I woke up in the worst pain. I had all these nurses holding me down, male nurses, and they were feeding me little tiny drops of fentanyl, which, as you know, is like the most fucking deadly drug in the world. And I had this one nurse, I forget her name, but she was awesome. And she had this like cold sponge, and she was like patting my forehead and shit. And then I get marched back up to my room, and I look down, and I'm like, what the fuck? And I'm like, yeah. So currently, I have a right here, I have, there's a big scar here, but I have basically my intestine. It's called an ileostomy. So my intestine, so my large intestine has been cut, thrown in the wastebasket, riddled with ulcerative colitis. The blessing, I'm in no pain. I didn't die. So there's that. So now my small intestine is out of my body, and I have this collecting bag. It's very brutal, but it's not permanent. And it's just why the rest of my tubes, my plumbing system, so to speak, has a chance to heal. So I have my reversal surgery where they retile the knots, and it's amazing how far medical science has come in order to be able to do that. So I will go back to normal eventually, but I still have probably another year and a half of a road to recovery ahead of me.
I had never listened to your podcast. That story is fucking crazy in detail, man.
Oh man,
I mean, yeah, dude. Fuck, that must have been so scary, dude. It's like you're in a fucking war zone, and this happens to you, and you have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, and then so my mum, who's just obviously, like everyone in my family, is freaking out, but the restrictions to leave Australia are really intense. And obviously at that point coming into Canada, like you basically need a letter from the government in order to say that you're allowed to do that at that point, right? Everything was on a complete shutdown. This was the first proper shutdown. So my mum, God bless her, and I definitely owe my survival to my wife and my mum, but I'm going to say a little bit more to my mum, because these are the moments in life where you realize that you just need mum. You need mum. You need mum's love, you know? And it gets worse because just as this happened, Kelsey, who had been studying for her line of work, which the irony is so funny, she's going into public health to make sure that we all don't get this virus or whatever. So she's been studying for almost 6 years at this point, and her line of work to get into is quite difficult. Once you're in, but it's hard to get that initial in. And just as I go to hospital, she gets the dream job opportunity, but she has to move 12 hours away to Smithers, BC. So she's like, for fuck's sakes. And I'm like, go, you've got to go. This is temporary. This is our future. You know, it was fucking hard. I didn't want it to, I'll tell you that much. But mum came over. Mum gets a letter from the government, fucking legend. She braves COVID. She's in Tokyo airport for like 48 hours, comes over to be with her boy. I get out of hospital. I come straight back in. I'm in good spirits at this point because I didn't die. And the pain for that month previous was so intense that I'm like, I'll fucking take this any day. And I'm starting to put weight back on. I got mum's cooking, mum's love, you know, she's so funny. My mum was just awesome. And, you know, she lives on the other side of the world and we're really close. So it was great. But then my wife left, you know, it sucked. And I thought I was like going to be fine with it. And I wasn't. It was brutal. I'm fine with it now. You know, time heals all wounds. But yeah, man. And I've never been very good at like telling my mates how hard things are because I'm such a fucking joker, I guess. I don't know. So it was really hard my paranoia was always like, if I show my friends how much pain I'm really in, maybe they won't be my friends anymore or some shit. Like, I know that's lame because my boys are my boys, but that's just how I felt. And so,
but you did. I'll mention something on that. Like you did post on Facebook like some very deep videos, like some telling it all scenarios, and that's the only reason I knew anything about this because like you weren't answering calls at that point. I think I texted you once during that time. You know, selfishly, like, can I come buy shit out of your garage before I knew you were in the hospital?
Oh no,
right?
It's all good. No one really knew the depth of it, and I did. I had a couple of crazy experiences in there where I just was like, I need people to know how fucking scared I am, and because I need some help. I need like people to just believe in me or so, like some support. Yeah, some support. And so, yeah, I definitely had some moments of vulnerability where I let people know just what I'm dealing with, and it scared a lot of people. And everybody was fucking awesome, you know, like it was great. I was really inundated with love, and, you know, shout out Elliot and Andy. They did like this telethon thing. They raised like $8,000 for me, and, you know, it was fucking awesome, man.
Yeah, shout out Elliot.
Big shout out Elliot. Such a sweet dude. So ultimately, man, look, here's the nutshell from it. There was many lessons that I learnt within that time period, as we touched on Hogan the other night. The big one is just being grateful for the small things. You don't think that you're going to react in moments of like complete, you know, fucking despair and like feeling lost and abandoned or whatever. You don't realize that it's those tiny, like, okay, here's a great example. I didn't touch on this in Hogan. My sister sent over a thing of flowers, you know, and this teddy bear, which I still have, Bobby. I wish I had it with me. He's in the room. That fucking teddy bear, dude, I didn't give a fuck. Doctors would come in. I'm like, what's happening? And I'd be like, what's that? She does have pretty eyes. Bobby said you got pretty eyes. And it just like fucking around. But I treated it sounds weird, but I did kind of treat it like a dog or something. It was like because I had no one could come visit me, and I was lonely and scared. So
totally,
that little thing of that little fucking gesture from my sister, I burst into tears when that thing came in. It was like someone giving me like a puppy. I can't explain it. I was just I so needed something to kind of like help me get through this. And yeah, man, brutal time, but I learned so much, man. I learned so much about who I am, what I want. Big one, learn who my fucking friends are. Definitely cut some snakes out. And, you know, so I don't know. There's, like I said, if anyone's more curious, there's a lot more to this. My podcast, it's called Before I Forget. I'm going to get back into it when I have some bit more time, but I started realizing that my memory's going, morphine's not helping, and I have all these crazy stories from traveling. I'm like, I'm going to start just chronicling them, and I'm going to start with the hospital one. It's called Hellspital, How to Almost Die. And because I got sick of telling the story, it's fine now because it's been so long. But at the time, everybody kept asking. So I'm like, listen, if you want to know, it's over there. So,
yeah. That's fucking wild, dude. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad we've like been getting closer after this whole thing, and we've reconnected, which has been super fun.
Totally.
I did want to touch on what you said about being vulnerable with your friends. I don't know if you saw Jesse, but Jesse is very big on being vulnerable, and I think it's commendable because he tells his friends all the time that he loves them. You know?
Yeah, dude. I mean, that side of my personality, I'm absolutely fine with. I've always been very much in touch with that. It's more I've always preached this, always look on the bright side of life, Monty Python thing, you know what I mean? Where like use comedy to like mask my pain. As far as how my friends are doing, I'm the first to always want to come and check in. I always tell my boys I love them. But I do struggle, not so much now, but I just struggle. It's a guy thing. Like we inherently...
It's a guy thing, yeah.
We feel like we just don't want to burden somebody else with our shit because we think subconsciously, well, they have their own shit. So why would I like bring a downer to their day? Well, the reality is that's exactly why you have fucking friends in the first place. You're meant to help each other. You know,
it's masculinity. If people think if I am vulnerable and I show my weak side and I share that, then it makes me look weak, and I don't want to be perceived as weak. You know, you do that with the women in your life, you do that with the men in your life, and it's like it's not. You have to let it out. You can't bottle it up. It's healthier to let it out and express it and share it with the people. And like, so yeah, I mean, obviously, I know you're about it. I'm about it now, but Jesse's really been about it for way more, and he's actually kind of like helped me become cool with it, you know?
Yeah.
So I really like give my brother shouts out for that. And I'm telling this to everybody, all the other guys out there, like fucking, if you got to cry to your homies, you got to cry to your homies, man. And that's just the way it is. And don't be scared about it.
Yeah, dude, I'm 100% with you on that. Like the weird thing is with the whole, like when it comes to masculinity and shedding a tear, I've always been, my dad's bipolar. And I'm really close with my mum, you know, and there's a lot of female energy in my house growing up. It was myself, my sister, and my mum for the longest time until my little brother came in the picture. But, you know, as far as like being open and talking about our feelings as a family, no problem. Always have been able to. But when it comes to like crying in front of your mates, yeah, that takes some growing, and you need some positive influence like someone like Jesse to let you know that that's totally fine to do that. But I've always found it interesting that, you know, I guess as male society kind of looks down on calling somebody a pussy for crying. To me is so makes no sense. It's so the opposite. Like you got so much balls. If you're doing a thing where you know there's a risk of being made fun of, but you're doing it anyway, how does that make you a pussy? Doesn't that make you strong? That's how I've always kind of looked at it when it comes to like crying. At the end of the day, anything that releases out of our body, we feel way better. Like when you're busting for a piss and you get off the airplane, such a good feeling. Like anything that you're releasing,
that's a great example.
Always feels fucking good. Toxins are meant to get the fuck out of you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, crying okay. It's a cleanse. It's cleansing of your emotions. It's getting it out so you can fucking move on.
Here is another crucial thing on crying. I can't believe I forgot to mention this. Because of my scar, like it took me, I couldn't laugh. I couldn't move my stomach in any way. So when you cry, your stomach muscles flutter like the same when you laugh. Your abs, they contract. That was excruciating. The agony was insane. So I was like, I couldn't watch anything funny, which is the one thing I use to get through stuff is humor. So that was out. Had to just watch David Attenborough documentaries and shit. And I couldn't cry. And it's all I fucking wanted to do the whole time I was in there. Because I knew that if I got it out, I'll feel better. Like, you know, punching a boxing bag or something, just getting that out. So that sucked. That was brutal, man. I had to I would try to control my breathing and get into this kind of Zen state where I could let some sort of emotion out, but you just get so choked up from how heavy everything is. And then the second your tummy started doing that, I had pain was just next level. And then all of my stitches from all of the steroids that I'd been on for like the fucking 5 weeks or whatever previous, when it came time for them to take my stitches out, they're taking it out. Super painful, by the way, because they let it stay a little bit longer. Because of the steroids, they knew that there was a risk they could open up, so they had to let them stay a bit longer. Because you
basically your immune system wasn't healing the wound like it normally should.
Exactly. So my skin was starting to grow over the staples, and I had hit my reach of painkillers for that day. And they were like, "Do you want them out today, or do you want to wait tomorrow?" I was like, "Fucking take them out today. I'm sick of them." Wish I'd waited the next day, but I didn't. Pop, pop, pop. Ah, fuck. And then all of a sudden, I just hear the doctor go, "Ah, shit." Exactly like that. "Ah, shit." I look down, there's a fucking black hole. All my staples, like alien, go shh, and just open up. So then I had a whole other thing of like house nurses coming to the house. And anyway, on my podcast, if you're curious, people.
Yeah, tune into that one. Okay, well, let's get into the show and tell. Everyone wants to see some shit. Everyone loves seeing some teas, some stuff that stokes you out. Let's get stoked. Let's see some shit.
So I basically have a
By
box
the way,
up
before
here.
you do this,
Yeah.
I see in the background you made the shirt.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So do you want to start with that?
Let's start with this. Okay, so my good friend Perry and I, look. First and foremost, one thing people need to know about me is I do take the piss, but it comes from a place of love and it's just boys busting balls. So if you are a Disney head, I don't hate on you. This is just a bit of fun. I personally don't get it, so I made this shirt. So this is a spoof on the classic Fugazi shirt. This is not a Fugazi shirt. So Fugazi never made merch, but at some point somebody made This Is Not a Fugazi t-shirt as a response to how kind of uptight they were about that. The band thought it was funny, so they kind of let it slide. And on the back of the shirt, they put "You Are Not What You Own," which is lyrics in one of their songs called Merchandise, I think. So I changed it to "You Are Not What You Cop." And this is not a Disney shirt with the Spaghetti Boys, which is Perry and I's little t-shirt thing. Spaghetti Boys 2020.
That's so sick. So these are on vintage?
Yeah, these are printed all on vintage. I've got a run of I've got a run of 50 of them. I'm doing this crazy promotion thing with stop animation, so it's taking me forever. Hopefully in the next week I'll have it all done and you can buy them. But yeah, this is just a bit of fucking fun, guys. And I do know that there's a lot of old heads that will be very proud.
Oh, dude, you're selling out pretty quick, man.
Yeah. Okay, so what I have is this here is my t-shirt room, essentially. So this is just stuff that is either going on eBay, going to be for Hogan, or, it's just like my slightly higher tier level stuff that's not going to go to the shop. I just fold up and put in here. So this wall behind me is really just kind of more the type of the stuff that I was picking back in the day for you. So it's more like 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s kind of quote unquote traditional kind of tees. And then if we turn this around, this wall, and it goes underneath this table, this is more 90s.
Yeah, so if you're listening to this on the podcast, basically wall to wall stacked shelving with t-shirts ready to go. All right. Technical difficulties, people. We had good audio and then it fucked up. So Kirby's Show and Tell will be posted as a separate YouTube video. If you want to see that, go check out the YouTube channel and watch Kirby's Show and Tell. Back to the podcast. We're going to finish this one. Sorry about the fucked up audio.
Let's get into what you're about now. Like, we haven't even talked about your store. So you have a store now. Fill us in.
Yes. So shout out Skylar, who offered me a great space inside the Mintage Mall, which is on 245 East Broadway. And so it's basically a shopping mall for vintage clothing. I have probably the biggest store in there, pretty much half of it. And yeah, when I first opened it up, I had all this shit in here, all of my favorite stuff. And I was sort of treating it like a museum / store. Then it sort of just got to a point where I didn't really want to be there too much. And I just I was scared that shit was going to get lost or the staff would accidentally sell it. So I decided to take a turn and basically just do the cheapest stuff I can hook up people in the cheapest way possible. And so I started this thing called Whateverland, where Dead Union's going to remain a separate channel. And then I have Whateverland. And Whateverland is just more affordable vintage, really. Still under the same umbrella on what's hitting, but, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like, I went in there not too long ago and bought a bunch of shirts. There's some great stuff on the wall. You still have a $5 rack. You have lots in, like, the $20, $30 range, right?
Yeah.
And then there was, like, I think I bought, like, a $60 tee and, like, some cool shit. So,
yeah,
definitely check that out. And it's basically not kitty corner. It's, like, almost right across the road from F as in Frank. So, if you're in the area, make a day of it.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, if you're, obviously right now during COVID, it's a little bit hard to come over to the border from Seattle or Portland, peeps, come and check us out in Vancouver. But when this all opens up again, I mean, the little cluster area where Drew and I are, I mean, it's fucking it's the epicenter for cool shit. Really, you don't really need to go anywhere else as far as I'm concerned.
You start at our stores, then you walk up Main, and
you get on a
you're
bus
good.
and fuck off. No. Yeah, and there's some great stores in there. Like shout out Meredith, Shop Low Life, and obviously Mintage and Sky. So yeah, it's definitely worth checking out. And I love that.
Like we mentioned, Skylar. He's one of the old. He had a store in Van before F is in Frank, but he moved that store, so now he has 2 stores: the Mintage Mall and one on Commercial Drive. But besides us, I believe he is the longest running vintage business in Vancouver that's brick and mortar.
Yeah, and I think like a lot of his bread and butter is dresses. You know what I mean? So he's another guy that I've bought a lot of cool killer pieces off over the years because he does so well in his retail, catering to that, for lack of a better term, 50s girl vibe, which probably is dying a little bit these days, to be honest. Because at one point, fuck man, like rockabilly type fashion, every girl, like that show Mad Men, I think maybe put that on the map. I'm not sure what it was, but there was definitely a period there where like 50s dresses were, I was getting emails all the time.
Yeah, I just think that's always been a good market. Like good dresses is one of those staples that we were always able to sell decently consistent.
Yeah.
I feel like, but nowadays, the only thing you ever need to wear is track pants and a t-shirt. So
yeah,
if you're not in one of those businesses, you're kind of hooped.
Sort of how I feel. But yeah, shout out Sky because he's just managed to carve his little lane and stay kind of true to who he is, and he's always done well. But yeah,
totally.
I mean, anyway, so yeah, man.
So that leads us in to Hogan. Fill us in, Kirby. Most people that watch this, hopefully you've tuned in, or you're dead to me. No, but you need to be tuning in. You are dead
to me. Yeah. Well, so like I think the biggest person to shout out here, and I think everybody that is doing a live has a great deal of gratitude and should have a great deal of gratitude to Chris at 1980 something, who really is the guy that put this whole idea on the map. My understanding, it was a response to COVID shutting down the flea markets. His bread and butter was these flea markets, Melrose Flea, I think. And so he was just had a light bulb idea of why don't I try and essentially sell this stuff on Instagram Live. Fast forward, I guess, almost a year now of him doing that, and there's so many lives, but there's only 2 that matter, his and Hogan. So the point is don't tune into anybody else, joking. But yeah, so it's Drew and I every Tuesday, but that's about to change. And,
so yeah, for this week, we're actually going to switch it up on you guys. And for the new listeners, we're going to be going on Friday. So yeah, what's the date of next Friday? Curb, you got that?
I sure do, Drew. I sure do. Give me 1 second.
So Tuesday, actually, we'll shout this out too, because Tuesday, Kirby and I are going to be going on a special edition of Coops Live, which is an all-Canadian edition, and that should be fun. And then we're going to move ours to Friday, so you guys can spend your hard-earned paychecks on rad shit with us.
Yeah, and like, don't give us this shit of like, oh, I'm going out. You're not going out. You're staying in, and you're chilling with us. So I guess if we're not doing this coming Friday, the following.
Yeah.
So that'll be the 22nd of January. Will be the first.
So mark it on your calendars. 22nd of January, 6 p.m. Obviously, follow Kirby on Instagram, and we will see you on Hogan shortly.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, every Hogan, we end it by doing what is becoming an absolute fucking phenomenon. The mystery tea. Now, what's
taking the world by storm.
No one has been disappointed. You can go and look at Drew's feed. All the Hogan episodes there. Go and see the reaction. I mean, we're really hooking it up, and so that's not going to change. We're moving the day, but we're still hooking you up. We're raising the roof. Mystery tea.
You have no idea what it is. You just bid, hope for the best. You roll that dice.
Yeah, and it's fun, and it's a good hang, and I like to think we kind of put a bit of a different spin on it. And I don't know, man, like when this whole thing started popping off and everybody was using the term community, I'm now kind of on board with it. As you know, I had ruffled my feathers, but it really is starting to fucking feel like that. It is starting to feel like a bit of a family. So I don't know. I think this old head's starting to be swayed. If you can't beat them, join them. And I'm finally on board, and I'm like, hi kids, I'm here with my backpack, and what's going on? but it's fun, man. It's fun.
And so come join our family, guys. Come join the family. last words, shout outs, anybody else you want to thank on here? Curb, that was a great episode.
I want to thank a couple of people. I do, and it's funny you had him on recently. I do want to thank, there's not too many people I idolize in this industry, because I feel like it's like idolizing a garbage collector. Like, we all going out there, we'll if you love it, it's just like fun to hang with your boys and go look for cool shit. However, I mean, you're one because you opened the door for me, so I'm very grateful for that. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
The other person that I just want to give a big shout out to is Larry, Hella's Cafe, just because he's someone I just always looked up to. And I just think as a person, I mean, that podcast you did with him was so much proof. He's just such a great guy. And the stuff that he finds is the stuff that we all wish we could find. So, you know, from a lover of actual cool old shit, to me, he's still the top dog. Everybody else, I think I've mentioned, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I
totally.
want to thank myself, man. I fucking hustled, man. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
One last thing before we sign off. Is there anybody out there who you kind of want to put on, like maybe like shine a little light on, like somebody that, okay, great.
Yeah, there is, man. And I'm fucking feeling so bad, but I know that you know his Instagram handle, the New Zealand dude, something Jack.
Oh, Never Slack Jack.
I want to put him on because two things. When it comes to like Instagram, and you've spoken about this in the past, where it's one thing if you're just showcasing your stuff and we're never seeing a face, like we're not putting a face to the brand, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. But when I can have an emotional connection because I'm like, this would be my boy, like I could get along with this person, it makes me want to spend more money with that person. So that's something that I think people should be aware of. It's totally fine to hide behind your thing, or maybe you don't have the confidence, or maybe there's a billion other reasons why you just don't feel ready to put yourself out there. That's absolutely fine. But just know that if this is meant to be a community and we're meant to be making connections with people, it's hard to do that if I can't see who the person is. It's nice to put a face to the name. And the thing with that Jack dude, I instantly fell in love with him because his heart makes me want to spend money with him. He's just he's got a good heart and he's got a good hustle going. He is doing it in a place that is impossible to do it. And he's making it work and he's growing. So, yeah, I fucking love that dude, man. He's been my favorite new kind of follow, I suppose.
That's awesome. He's going to be fired up. And that is a great put on, man. We're friends. We chat often. Obviously, yeah, you know, Ren's from New Zealand, so I go to New Zealand. So like, I feel anybody that comes out of New Zealand doing it, I understand how hard it is, and I totally appreciate it.
They're the biggest underdogs in the world, man. And
yeah, I mean, even more so than New Zealand, because it's like I don't know, a tenth the population of Australia, right? Even.
Oh man, absolutely. Like, yeah. I mean, I just think that he's a good, like you've spoken about in the past about low hanging fruit is just so easy, to sell versus something where you have to spit shine it and make it appealing. And I think he's a good version of that. Like, it is hard. It's going to be impossible to find Grateful Dead and all over print, USA made, whatever, in New Zealand. So he's shining a spotlight on New Zealand made stuff. And that's fucking cool as hell. Making it cool because he's cool. And obviously if he's getting some cool USA pieces, whatever, thrown in the mix. But for the most part, I just love how true to him and his kind of heritage he is. And to me, being real is always going to win. And there's not many real. There's not much real out there. And when you find it, for me, I just want to duct tape it to me. Like, you're coming with me. So, yeah.
So go follow Never Slack Jack. And he's a six skater. And I love it when he posts his skate. Like, I think he was like semi-pro or at least sponsored skater back in the day.
He had to have been.
He's still fucking sick. Like, he lays it down.
Yeah. Dude, yeah, he's fucking amazing, man. Yeah. And then my other guy, Perry Shaw, he's just like an absolute, he's somebody that is madly in love with this shit. You know, probably more than anybody I've ever met. And so for that reason, I just am very drawn to passion. You don't have to be in vintage. You could be a guy that just makes the greatest fucking coffee tables. But if you live and breathe coffee tables, I want to fuck with you. Like, there's something so magnetic about that passion. So I just like really passionate people, and I need to see the passion.
Yeah, totally. That's awesome. So also go follow Perry Shaw, and you do Spaghetti Boys with Perry. So if you follow Kirby, you'll probably see Perry.
Yeah, there's one coming up.
Okay, Kirby, that brings us to the end, dude. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you, man.
And
This has
thank
been
you
real
for
fun.
thank you for sharing intimate memories and stories.
No worries.
And
No worries.
love you, dude.
Yeah, back at you, man. And listen, I want to say one last thing. If anybody, guys, mainly, just because we're so bad at communicating, if there's any guys out there that are going through any sort of health-related stuff to what I spoke about, I'm an open book. If you have any questions, if you're having similar symptoms, please feel free to DM me.
Wicked.
Yeah. Cool, man. Okay, we'll see you next Hogan.
Thank you for tuning in as always. I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you are interested in supporting me via Patreon and getting all the member benefits, click down below and shop FAsInFrankVintage.com and go check out my stores. And I got a phone call coming in, but whatever. And that's it for today. See you on the next one.